Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to read you one of my favorite stories, Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh, yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse, and she laid her eggs into a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a group of trumpet fish hidden in the patch of reeds. Can you see those fish in there? Let's check out this cool page. There they are. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. And look at that. Look at them all. As Mr. Seahorse drifted through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Can you see the lionfish? Look it. Ready? Here's another cool page. There's the lionfish. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know," said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you are taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. And look it, there they are, nice and safe. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by several leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. Can you see the leaf fish? They look just like leaves. Let's turn this cool page. There they are. See that? They look the same. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I have them stuck on my head. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You are doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. And there they all are on his head. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a stonefish hidden behind a rock. Can you see the stonefish? Ready? Here we go. Look at that. And there he was, behind that rock. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel so proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. And there are all the little eggs. Before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. "Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You're doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. And look at all these baby fish all over. You could maybe count them later. The time had come for the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and they swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. "Oh no," said Mr. Seahorse, "I do love you, but now you're ready to be on your own." The end. Thank you. Talk to you soon.